Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Unleash Your Voice. Today, I want to tell you how I have unleashed my own voice and how I've done it over and over again at different points in my career. And in fact, in different careers, because you may know I started my career in TV and then I worked in tech and then I started doing the work that I do now. And at different points, I have had to unleash my voice in different ways, and I've had to do it strategically. Now, I want to start somewhere that I think many of you will relate to, a belief that I had from a very young age. When I was growing up, I always believed with my whole heart that if I worked harder than everyone else, I would get where I wanted to go. And honestly, for a long time, that worked. I got the highest award in high school, the President's Gold Medal. I was the news director of my college radio station. I was one of few graduates with a journalism job offer lined up when I finished school. Working harder than everyone else did pay off for me for a long time. And if you're nodding along, you're probably an overachiever. You might be an overworker. Bonus points if, like me, you're also an eldest daughter or the daughter of immigrants. This is probably resonating with you if any of those apply, because that formula works until it doesn't. And this is exactly where most people get stuck. So let me tell you when it stopped working for me, because I bet you've experienced or are experiencing something similar. So for me, it was about 5 years into my career. And what I see with the women that I meet and work with is that it's usually that 5 to 10 year mark. And, there are outliers, right? For some people, it happens earlier or later. But most people, it's around that time. And by this point, you're not struggling week to week financially, right? You have a stable paycheck. You might even be earning six figures. You're working incredibly hard, but all of a sudden, the results stop coming. You stop moving up, you start getting overlooked, and you see people around you who are not working as hard as you, getting better opportunities. And you're sitting there thinking, what the hell is going on? Right? Okay, so for me, this happened when I was working as a TV journalist. I had a full-time job as a morning show host and news anchor in a medium-sized market, and I was still doing everything that had helped me to achieve that. I was coming in early, I was staying late, I was volunteering for every shift when someone was sick or on vacation. I was working weekends. I learned every role. I learned how to do the weather, how to anchor, how to report for our lifestyle show, how to report for the news show. I made myself the person who could fill in for anyone. And here's the thing, this doesn't just happen in TV, right? If you work in any other industry, I'm sure you're thinking, yeah, it's the same thing in my industry, right? Early in your career, the people who stand out are the hardest workers. But around that 5 to 10 year mark, some of those hard workers start to get left behind. There are three reasons why this happens. And I didn't realize this at the time, but looking back, it's crystal clear. So here are the three things that people who get left behind are doing or aren't doing more accurately. So, number one, you aren't advocating for yourself. So the perception becomes that you're a doer. You get things done, but no one sees you as strategic because you're not talking about how you get things done, the strategy behind it, your processes. Okay, number two, you haven't built champions. People who know your work, know your goals, and are saying your name in rooms you aren't in. And number three, you haven't built a personal brand. So people don't know what's unique about what you do, and then you end up just blending in. And let me be very honest with you about my experience, because I was not doing any of these things. I wasn't advocating for myself. I didn't have champions and I didn't have a personal brand. And I would say that I was the worst version of myself during that time. I was snappy with the people around me. I was bitter. I was constantly comparing myself to others. My confidence was tanking. And we all know that those things bleed over into your personal life. I actually remember later, once I'd gotten out of this phase, my husband saying to me that he used to be so nervous every time he heard me come home from work because almost every day I was, "You'll never guess what happened today." And I would just immediately launch into complaining. And nobody wants to be around that person, right? I sometimes when I think about who I was in this phase of my life, it just feels like it wasn't even me. So when we're in these places, right, where our confidence is low, we're bitter, we're seeing other people get ahead and we're not, the last thing you want to do is advocate for yourself. But it was for me. And if you're in this place too, it's the one thing you need to do, even though it's the last thing you want to do. So, what changed everything for me and what honestly propelled me to take action was desperation. And I'm being honest with you here because I don't want to sugarcoat things and make it sound like, one day I just woke up positive and no, like that's not what happens. But I was so desperate to get out of this job. I was miserable after years of experiencing sexism, racism, toxic bosses. Like I just wanted out. And so this move to figure out how to get out of there really did come from a desperate place. So what I did is I took inventory of what I was doing that wasn't working. I was really trying to network at the time. When I looked at my messages, I realized I was sounding really generic. So at the time, I was sending emails and Twitter messages at the time, RIP, Twitter, but that's how we were communicating at the time in the news industry. So, my messages were something like, "Hi, my name is Priya, and I'm a news anchor and morning show host with 5 years of experience," basically summarizing my resume. And guess what? No one cared. I sounded just like everyone else, and I wasn't getting any responses. And, when I was meeting new people, I was saying some of the same things, and I just wasn't standing out. It felt like no one cared. So then I started looking at the people who were getting ahead. What were they doing? Okay, so I saw them telling stories about their work. They were talking about the impact of their work to decision makers, right? Making sure the leaders knew how much time they were spending on their stories, the impact they were having when they got social media messages or something went viral on social media. They were making sure they knew about that. They were also building personal brands. And so they weren't jumping at everything like I was. I was the person who every time there was an opportunity, "Oh, I can do that. I can stay late. I can come in early. I can fill in for so and so." These people were being strategic. They were only saying yes to things that aligned with either their personal brands or getting them to their next goal. So I changed my approach because that approach of saying yes to everything is a recipe for burnout. And I was definitely experiencing that. So the first thing I did is I started to think, okay, what is my personal brand? What do I want to be known for? And here, if you're in this place, I want you to think about what you already like to do and what you are already good at. So for me, I at the time and still am, really interested in fitness. So I thought, why don't I pitch a new segment that I will be my segment, Priya's Fitness Fridays. So I pitched that segment, something that I could be known for, right? I also had this, and I still do. I love puns, okay? And if you hate puns, I'm sorry, but I love them. The cheesiest, most like dad joke puns, those are my jam. And so I started to throw them into my scripts. I started to like, anytime I saw an opportunity, I would create a pun when we were on the morning show, and people started connecting those things to me. They would see me out and be like, "Oh, yeah, you're the Fitness Friday girl," or, "Oh my gosh, your pun the other day was so funny," or, "Oh my gosh, every time you say a pun, I roll my eyes," but they would still laugh, and it was still something they knew about me. Okay, so now after building this personal brand, Then I knew I had to start telling stories about the impact. Okay, my puns increased social engagement. At the time, TV stations were really trying to figure out social media and how to translate their on air content to social media. My fitness segments started getting sponsors and bringing in advertising dollars. Now I wasn't just a hard worker, I was someone who brought value. So if you are thinking about this in the corporate world, I'll tell you because I did the same thing in building a personal brand in corporate. So I'll tell you more about how you can think about it then. But it's the same pillars, right? Things you're already good at, things you genuinely like to do and are passionate about. And then you need to learn how to tell stories about the impact. And those stories are going to help you build the champions who are going to help you get ahead. So as I started doing this, then I started sharing my work, sharing the stories about my impact with leaders at other stations who all of a sudden now wanted to talk to me, right? They were interested in what I was doing. They were responding to my messages on Twitter and my emails because I wasn't just summarizing my resume. I was telling them about the innovative segments I was doing, how a video with some of my puns had gone viral. Within a year, the network offered me a job on the national morning show. And for those of you who are in the US, you can think of this as the Canadian equivalent of Good Morning America. So this was a huge deal. And I also was offered a salary increase of 40%, all because I focused on those three things. I built my personal brand. I built a network of champions around me, right? People who were saying my name in rooms I wasn't in. And I started to advocate for myself. Then, fast forward to a couple of years later, I ended up leaving TV for tech. And you know what? I didn't waste a second because I knew the formula. I knew those three things I needed to do. So I just jumped right in advocating for myself. I built champions right away. I built a strategic personal brand. So my job in tech was as a solutions consultant, which is basically a product expert who worked with a sales team doing a lot of presentations and product demonstrations. So I built a personal brand for myself as a strategic storytelling expert with exceptional presentation skills and executive presence. I made sure that when somebody sent me a message on Slack or an email praising a presentation I did or how I performed in an executive meeting, a story that really resonated, I made sure I sent it to my boss. I ran storytelling workshops so that I could get more visibility and position myself as a storytelling expert, not just on my team, but across the company. I became known for something very specific. And then not even 2 years in, I think it was a year and 8 months into my time at my first tech job, I got a message from a recruiter at a company called Slack. So at the time I was working at Hootsuite, which was about a 1,000-person company. A recruiter from Slack at the time was about a 3,000-person company messaged me mentioning they'd heard about my storytelling and presentation skills. I still to this day don't even know who they heard that from or who referred them to me. But again, I had champions out there. I had a personal brand that was out there. People were saying my name in rooms I wasn't in. And in that move, right before I signed the contract, I thought back to my salary in TV and I realized, wow, I got this job at Slack. I'm about to sign this contract. It is double what I was making in my last TV job. So I doubled my salary from 80K to 160K in under 2 years. All because of those three things: advocating for myself, building champions, and building that strategic personal brand. Now, shortly after I arrived at Slack, Slack was acquired by Salesforce. And I repeated the same thing when I got to Salesforce. I leaned even further into storytelling. I became a top performer and I built this personal brand again as a strategic storyteller. Now, I got a little more focused here because when I got to Salesforce, I realized, you know what? I want to be on stages. I want to bring my storytelling to conference and event stages. So again, I advocated for myself to do that. And I became a go-to speaker at Salesforce, which is a 70,000 person company. And I built a personal brand there that was so strong, and I developed my storytelling skills in sales as well, to the point where I became a top performer, and I got a free trip to Hawaii for Salesforce's President's Club, which they call Peak Performers Club. Now, remember, none of this is because I worked harder. It's because I worked smarter and more strategically. So, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, I've done everything right, so why am I stuck? This is why. You do not need to work harder. You need to advocate for yourself, build champions, and create a strategic personal brand. So if you're wondering where to start, that's exactly what I would do. I would strip away everything else and focus on those three things. Now, where I see most people get stuck is in that decision to take action. And I'm going to be honest, I am an action taking queen. That part is easy for me, but I see so many women hesitate right there. So, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I know I'm meant for more, but I just need that spark, I need that push. I want to invite you to book a free career accelerator call with me. On this call, we'll get clear on your next career move, identify your number one communication block, and I will build a personalized action plan for you on how to elevate your brand based on where you are right now and the goal you're working towards. The link to book a call is in the show notes. You could also DM me Accelerate or on LinkedIn or Instagram, and I will send you the link. I am only opening 10 spots in the next week. So make sure you grab yours before they're gone. And if you start implementing some of this for yourself, then let me know how it goes. I love hearing from you. I love hearing your success stories and celebrating with you. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Unleash Your Voice, and I will see you next week.